I want to talk today about mindfulness of the body. This is a term that is found in Western science, thankfully, due to the research of John Kabat-Zinn primarily and others who have adapted mindfulness of the body to our Western culture. John Kabat-Zinn is very important because he took the teachings of how to do mindfulness from the Buddha and adapted them to help people who were struggling with, originally with pain disorders, later with anxiety, and then also with depression, and showed that mindfulness, particularly mindfulness of the body, was very helpful. One of the things that he talked about specifically was how a person, when practicing mindfulness of the body, this is different than relaxation training. In relaxation training, we have a purpose and a goal to relax the entire body, which is perfectly fine. But in mindfulness, we are not having that as a goal. In mindfulness, we're learning how to observe the body, how to accept each part of the body, and how to let go of each of the parts of the body so that we don't get stuck in one part. We're able to learn to accept it and let it go. If we experience relaxation, that's fine, but that's not the purpose. When mindfulness of the body first came to the West, to UMass, actually on the East Coast of the United States, in Boston, Kabat-Zinn, being a scientist, knew that there was a connection between the body and the brain in an area called the sensory motor ridge. Sensory means we get information, motor means that we send information to the body for it to move. And this sensory motor ridge we've known about since the 1930s is connected to each of the parts of the body, and it is oriented upside down and backwards. So the big left toe would be located at the top of the sensory motor ridge on the right side. And each part of the body then goes down, except in this sensory motor ridge we have a big hand and big mouth. Lots of nerve endings in those areas. Certain parts of the body reflected in the sensory motor ridge have very small amounts of sensory data, and so we don't feel so much in those areas. But the hands and mouth, lots of sensory data. So this is called the little person, or the homunculus. And you can go online and you can see pictures, kind of distorted picture of the human form, the homunculus. John Kabat-Zinn, being faithful to science, did not make a connection between the internal organs and the brain, because at that time, there were, in the 70s and 80s, there was very little information about how the internal organs were reflected in a map in the brain. And it took until 2009 for us to have that information based on the research done originally by Bud Craig at Arizona State University, discovered that there is actually a map of the internal organs in an area of the brain called the insula. So if you focus on your liver, for example, if you get good at that, then it will turn on, metaphorically, a light in the insula area, etc., for each of the internal organs. But we didn't know that originally when Kabat-Zinn started to do his research. So when he developed MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction, and he talked about the body scan, he talked primarily about the external, the muscles in the body that have the correspondence to the sensory motor ridge. Now, if we go back 2,500 years to the Buddha, who initially taught mindfulness, he talked about mindfulness of the body. He broke it down into 32 parts. 23, 24 of those parts are actually internal organ parts. We really emphasize the internal organs a lot. When this technique got to China around 7th, 8th century, and lay people wanted to practice mindfulness of the body, the great teachers at that time, probably either Master Baizhang or one of his students, streamlined the mindfulness of the body from the 32 parts into 12 parts. And so that it was more easily followed by lay people, because the Buddha's 32 parts were randomized throughout the body. The 12 parts, 6 parts of the external parts of the body, easy to follow. They go in a sequence. We start with the head area, and then we go down the arms, up the front of the body, down the back, into the hips, and then into the legs, 6 parts. And then we're able to do 6 parts of the internal organs, using the breath to help us stay focused so that we don't rush through it. We go through the 6 parts of the internal organs, 3 breaths to the heart, easy to contact the heart, 6 breaths to the lungs, 9 breaths to the liver on the upper right quadrant, and then we do the 9 parts of the internal organs related to digestion, the throat, esophagus, stomach, the 3 parts of the small intestines, the duodenum, the jejunum that goes around, and the ileum, and then the ascending colon transverse descending on the left, the large intestines. 1 breath to each part. Unless you're experiencing distress there, you can spend more time. And then 9 breaths to the pancreas. The pancreas produces enzymes that break down the food in the digestive system. And there's a head, a body, and a tail. The tail of the pancreas has the islets of Langerhans that produce insulin that break down the sugars and creates the Krebs cycle that results in ATP that is the fuel for each of the cells in the body. So the pancreas is very important. 9 breaths. And then 9 breaths to the kidneys on either side of the lower back. So these are the 6 organs that we use to help us focus on the body. And then we can spend a little bit of time on the fluids of the body. The oil in the hair and the oil on the face and the sweat. And then we have the tears and the mucus and the phlegm. We even have cerebral spinal fluid if you want to get in detail, and the fluids in the joints, the urine, of course, and the spleen that relates to the white blood cells that go throughout that system, and then the blood. So we can take care of all of these different systems of the body. And then the electrical system that flows through the body, just a little bit on that, all the way up to the brain. So this is the 20 minutes that we can do of mindfulness of the body. So when we do this technique, we try to observe, accept, let go of each part. So this is the method that we use. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoy doing the 12 parts of the mindfulness of the body